Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On today's video, we're going to fire up the mill and we're going to mill some trim pieces, some fascia, soffit, corner braces, corner trim, all for the chicken church. So another benefit of having the mill is we get to mill some of these odd size lumber pieces that you normally wouldn't be able to go get easily at the box store. And of course, saves us a ton of money. So let me show you what we're doing. So first I want to point out how much, if you guys look, we've cleaned up the log yard. We've cleaned up around the mill. And no, we're not burning witches back there. Not yet, at least. But we're taking all the scrap wood, the cut-offs, the butt pieces, some of the odds and ends boards that have been laying around, gotten a little bit infestation in them or started to rot. And we put them on our pile and burning those up so we can get them out of the way. And we've got 2 of our logs left from the poplar trees that we cut last month. And then, of course, it'll be time to start skidding in more. We just had Hurricane Ida remnants come through. So while we fortunately didn't get flooding, we did get a decent amount of rain. So all the ground's wet. So we're going to wait a couple days for things to dry out before we start skidding again. But the boards we need can easily come out of these 2 logs. So I'm going to get them bucked up to size and get them mounted. Then we'll start cutting them down. Now it seems like every time I use the tractor and my grapple to load a log, I get at least once or twice I get a comment, 2 different types of comments. The first is, where did you get the grapple? That's really cool. Well, that's a Norwood attachment. You can go to norwoodsawmills.com and find that. And the second is, Troy, you ought to consider a grapple for the front of your tractor. And to that I say, yeah, I've considered it, and since I seem to get that comment a lot, I'm going to create anyone that wants to fund Troy to get a grapple for his tractor fund, because the way I figured, it's about $5,000 to $6,000 for the grapple, the quick attach conversion, and the extra wet line that I need on the front of the tractor. So anybody wants to fund about $6 grand, I will put a grapple on that all day long. And yes, that comment, of course, was dripping with sarcasm and satire. And I apologize, I'm feeling a little saucy today because this cool weather has really got me fired up. Enjoying it. So we're gonna put a new blade on and start slinging some sawdust. All right, I just wanted to summarize real quick what I got out of that one small log. So by the time I squared that cant, got most of the wane off, still had a little bit of wane, but most of it off, we had an 8x7 cant. And I need 1x5s and 1x3s, which are some, not your typical sizes. So with that 8x7, I was able to turn the 8-inch side over and then cut down at 5 and 3. Now, that's going to take a little bit with the kerf. It's going to make that a little bit less than a 1x5 and a 1x3, but just the kerf is about 1/8 of an inch, so there's a 1/16 each board that's going to be short. But for what we're doing here, that's fine, because obviously it's going to shrink more than that by the time it dries out. So with that, that gave me 6 passes. So I have 6 1x5s and 6 1x3s, and then my leftover is a kind of a 1.5x5 and a 1.5x3. I wasn't going to go down to my 3/4 cut, because that gets me pretty close to my tab, my custom tab that I built. I don't want to take a chance of hitting my blade on that. So we'll just throw those on here for weight. Oh, I forgot to mention, you may have been doing the math to say, wait a minute, Troy, how'd you get that many cuts out of that? I actually cut those 3/4. So instead of doing a 4/4, a 1 inch, we went down to 3/4 to cut that. Because this is just going to be trim board and it doesn't have to be super thick. There's no structure to it at all. So wanted to maximize that cant as much as we could. All right, so that first log was about 10 feet where I cut it. And that's going to take care of the trim pieces I need for the short sides of the building of the chicken church. But for the fascia along the long sides, I really need 11-foot material finished. So a 12-foot log would obviously be handy and give me the material I need to cut off any checking, those type of things. So what I've got left is this long butt log from one of our poplar trees, but I'm in a little bit of a dilemma here, and that is the length and the curve. So let me show you what's going on here. So I think you guys can make out that this log goes that way a little bit. So it's curved, but obviously it's very long, so I can try to cut out that curve, but it's not long enough that if I cut it in half to try to remove that curve, or try to cut it in the apex, the maximum arch of that curve, I can try to get it out of there. I don't think it's going to give me long enough material. Let me see how long it is. So that's right at 17 feet long, which is actually unfortunate that I cut that log that way, but must have been a method to my madness when I did that. I'm not quite sure. But so I think what we'll do, the fact that I need a 12-foot log is only going to leave me 5 feet, which isn't much to work with on anything. So probably just going to start at the butt, come up at 12 feet, make my cut and mill that, and then this 5 feet will just be waste. The one thing that works to my advantage, of course, is this is a much larger diameter log, so by the time I cut the curve out, I'll still have enough of a square cant to get the material I need and then some. So this slab, I just took off this cut, so taking the top of the arch out of it. And I noticed this when I actually felled this tree, that it had this inclusion. So I wasn't quite sure how deep that split went. But you can see it actually scarred over and created a ridge there. I'll get down below it. So it's one of those, just like, okay, was that caused by metal? Was that caused just by stress or some other outside force? Ironically enough, further up the valley, I've got about 5 poplar in a small area that have the exact same thing, and those lines kind of all face one another. And there's some burn spots. It looks like maybe it was a lightning strike that caused some splitting a while back, and of course scarred over. But this is what we have here on the actual log. So you can see not only a crack, but we got some ants hanging out in it. And that crack goes all the way up pretty far. Probably runs to about right there. So fortunately this isn't going to be load-bearing wood, because if this is going to be a timber for a project, a pole barn or something like that, then yeah, out of there with that big split in it. But since this is just going to be fascia and trim type stuff, we'll still be good. We're going to flip it over, cut the belly out of it, and see what kind of cant we end up with. Look at it. Kind of looks like I'm trying to mill a banana, doesn't it? She got a bit of a smiley face to it. All right, so what we'll do, actually, to save blade and cutting through bark, I'm going to measure the bottom of the apex of the arc there, measure up from the bunk, and that should give me a good cutting reference, so that hopefully it's one pass through below the bark, and that's just a little bit less wear on my blade. All right, so we're going to have all kinds of fun with this one, because we ended up with an 8 3/4 by an 8 3/4, and I need 4 3/4 1x6s. Well, not 1x6s, 3/4 by 6s. I need just 4 of those. So I'm going to start by chiseling a little bit of those off, and I think we're going to end up with a true 2x8. I'd like to have that 8 for the weight, and then possibly use it for another project. So we'll see what we can get out there, and maybe just make extra 3/4 by 6s. We'll see. We get those first 2 off, then see what else we need. Maybe make some 2x6s, because we do need some 2x6s in a project upcoming. We'll see. Stick around, see what happens. So this tree was definitely under some tension as it grew, because we squared the cant, and even with milling and leaving my 3/4 boards on top, there's actually a smiley face or a frowny face that's actually starting to form. Check this out. So to correct that, we're going to flip it over and we're going to do an alignment cut. So we'll end up cutting that smiley face out. That piece is going. All right, so that left me with a true 2x6, 12 feet long. Now, most likely that thing's going to keep moving. In fact, maybe a lot of those boards are going to keep moving. That's why we're going to put as much weight on it. I may take this guy, since he's going to be so heavy, and use him as my primary weight to weigh all my 1x6s down. I went ahead and ran extra 1x6s because I realized I need 1x3s, more 1x3s as well. So if I have to, I can bring those or put those back on the mill, turn them on their sides, of course, and rip them in half. And that's a lot quicker than trying to do it with a hand saw or a circular saw or with the table saw. So I can just use the mill to cut those into the material I need after the fact. All right, so that turned out to be a decent little stack of lumber. Again, some odd dimensions there, some 3/4 by 6, some 3/4 by 3, some 3/4 by 5. So it's not the typical stuff you're going to go find in the box store. And of course, I think it's stronger, straighter, and just cheaper all around. so that's what I like. Another benefit of having the mill to be able to do that. Well, I know I normally don't ask this, but if you guys wouldn't mind, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. We try to do 2 videos a week, all pertaining to stuff here on the farm, homesteading, sawmilling, pigs, chickens, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. So give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and share it if you don't mind, to spread the word about what we've got going on here. All right, take care, everybody.